What a delight it is to be with you. I've been looking forward to this so much. I always like coming home to Seattle. This really is my home. As you heard, I'm deep Washington. I was born in Spokane because my father was a professor at Whitworth. Later, when I was 3 years old, yeah, great school. Later, he moved to Seattle Pacific when I was 3 years old, and this is where I grew up. My grandparents, one set was in Longview, the other set was in Yakima. I'm as Washington as they get, I have to say. And as long as I'm gone, anywhere where I am, my heart really is here. Now, it's tricky being from Washington and having certain values. I don't have to tell you that. And I'll give you an example of that. When I was in my 20s and I was traveling here and there, and finally in my late 20s, I'd been a French horn player all through my 20s. My parents called it my gap decade. But I went to college in my late 20s, and I was studying for the very first time economics. 28, 29 years old, and getting some kind of subversive ideas about how the economy works, about markets, about capitalism, and it was making my family a little nervous, I have to tell you. One Christmas I was back, I was living in Barcelona at the time, actually. I was playing in the orchestra while I was doing this studying, and my mom and I were cooking dinner in the kitchen on the north side of Queen Anne Hill, which is where our family home was. And she was being real quiet. Real kind of silent, which is unusual for my mom. And I finally said, "Mom, is there something on your mind?" And she said, yeah, there is. Your father and I are very worried about you. And I said, what is it? What is it? What could it be? And she said, look, we're going to love you either way, but I want you to be completely honest. Have you been voting for Republicans? Okay, now, I know that this is not a monolithic situation that we have right here. But that brings me to something a little bit more serious before I start the thrust of my remarks here. There's a lot of sadness and anger in our country in general, and especially over the past 24 hours. I was in Salt Lake City this morning, as a matter of fact. This is no joke when we have a political assassination in this country, to be sure. And the sadness and anger, they're initiated to no small extent because we don't know what we can do about it. And we don't want to lose our country. We just don't. We're all looking for something to do. But I have good news for you tonight. You are doing something really important, and I'm going to tell you why. For a long time, I was the president of the American Enterprise Institute, a think tank in Washington, D.C., and from my perch, I saw the best state think tanks in America. Every state has a think tank dedicated to business and to education, et cetera. The very best in America is the Washington Policy Center. Look, this is your gift to the state. But more than that, because you're the supporters, this is what gets it done. But more than that, this is a gift to America because this is what we need for two reasons. Number one is the substance, and you heard the experts talking about it here, really impressive. That substance is no joke, it's great. But there's also the style. Every single person from the stage has talked about the importance of talking across the aisle, of appealing to everybody, of not hating anybody. It's come up again and again and again at the gala dinner of the Washington Policy Center. Here's the point, my friends. Here's what America needs, and it's starting here with your support. This organization has very strong ideas and principles. That's great. And they offer them to everybody as a gift, not as a weapon. That's this organization. Now, there's one other thing, and this is really what I want to talk about tonight. This is why I'm so excited to be here. The principles, the values of the Washington Policy Center: freedom, opportunity, enterprise, lifting people up from the margins of society. Those things actually bring happiness. This is what we need. I want to tell you why. I want to tell you why that is the case. I want to tell you that the Washington Policy Center is not just in the policy business, it's in the happiness business, and that's what you're supporting. Now, as you heard Matt, my old friend, that's what I teach. I teach at the Harvard Business School, and people assume that I'm teaching something businessy, accounting, finance, marketing. I say, no, I teach happiness. And they think I'm lying. But here's the thing. There's an enterprise in each one of us. The American spirit is not about starting businesses per se. It's about seeing each of our lives as a startup. Each of you is the founder, the entrepreneur of You Incorporated. There's no other place in the world that sees life like that. That's why it's so exciting to be in the United States. But if you're going to be a good life entrepreneur, you better know the fortune you're trying to accumulate. It's not money or power or prestige or position. No, 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 no. It's love and happiness. Do you know? Yeah. Do you know how to create a fortune in love and happiness in your life and in the lives of other people? That's what I teach. Because I dare say that we're not trained very well in our society to accumulate a fortune in love and happiness. You need to treat it with the same set of business-like principles that all of you do in your daily work lives. That's how I structure it. My best student this year was Matt McElwain's daughter, Madison. Phenomenal. She's going to be a happiness billionaire. Okay. But here's the thing. The biggest problem that people have in the quest for happiness, even if they agree with my basic proposition, is that they don't know what it is. On the first day of class, which is always at the end of January, it's coming up. I just saw the enrollment. We're maxed out. I have 180 students in my class. I have 400 on the waiting list. There's an illegal Zoom link they think I'm not aware of. And on the first day of class, here's what I'm going to do. It's what I do every year. I cold call a student, which means I pick somebody out of the class. We do that at Harvard, cold calling. It makes them intensely unhappy. And you make them answer a question whether they're ready or not. Here's what I say. You're in the happiness class. What is it? And they all say the same thing. You know, I can't put it into words, but I know it when I feel it. And I say, oh, yeah, that's nice. And then I cold call somebody and they say, it's the feeling that I get when I'm with the people that I love. Or it's how I feel when I'm doing what I enjoy. And I say, beautiful, beautiful, poetic, wrong. And that's good news. Why? Because happiness isn't a feeling. This is incredibly good news. My friends, we have too much about feelings all the time. And if you leave your happiness up to feelings, you're going to be chasing it. And sometimes you'll have it and it'll be left up to the winds of your life and the slings and arrows of your emotions, and that's just not good enough. The good news is that happiness isn't a feeling any more than the smell of your turkey is your Thanksgiving dinner. Feelings are like the smell. Happiness is the actual dinner that you can study and get better at making, and you can enjoy, and that you can actually talk about scientifically, which is how the class starts. Now, if happiness isn't a feeling, what is it? Your Thanksgiving dinner isn't the smell, it's actually a set of macronutrients. Every dinner, what you just ate, what we all ate, the delicious dinner, is a combination of three things: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. That's not very romantic, but it's true. And the truth is that happiness works the same way. It has three constituent parts. Here are the three parts of happiness. When Thomas Jefferson was writing about the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence, an idea that he cribbed from Benjamin Franklin almost certainly, here's what he could have said to make it more specific on how to pursue happiness. Happiness has three parts, and they are enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. If you want to have a happy life, you need to be good at enjoying your life, finding the satisfaction with your achievements and accomplishments, and you need to find the meaning of your existence. Those are big tasks. That's the work of a lifetime. That's the adventure of a lifetime. This is what we need to be teaching young people to do, actually. This is what we need to be responsible for. I'm going to tell you later on how all the stuff you're hearing from this organization actually makes that possible. But before I do that, let me tell you what those things mean. Because here's the thing. Matt asked you to think about one thing, to concentrate perhaps on one thing I say tonight that might be useful to you. Here's a question for you. Where do you need work in your life? What do you need to touch up? It's really good news that none of you is an expert across all of these dimensions of happiness. We can all do better. And as I talk about this, I want you to be thinking about your own life and the lives of the people that you love, on how they can become happier and how you can make it easier for them to become happier as your gift to them. Let's start with enjoyment. Enjoyment is frequently misunderstood. In our society, people think of enjoyment as the same thing as pleasure, and that's wrong. I went to high school, at Queen Anne High School, with a lot of people whose goal in life was feeling good all the time. It didn't end well. They still seem to be in the old neighborhood, right? And why is that? And there's a reason for that. And the way I want you to understand the reason that the pursuit of pleasure doesn't lead to happiness requires that I actually explain a little bit about how the human brain works. 30% of what I teach my MBA students at Harvard is neuroscience, but they're not scientists. So here's how I talk about the brain in a kind of a non-technical way. The brain has 3 sets of functions organized by evolution. At the lowest evolutionary level, this is a set of functions that's more than 40 million years old. It's before Homo sapiens was a species. It's called the reptilian brain. We share this with snakes and lizards. If you have a brain stem and a spinal column, you can do this stuff. It's all the things that you sense below your level of awareness. Right now, you sense the air temperature. You sense how much light is in the room. You kind of have an estimate of how many people are in here, whether or not they're a personal threat to you, so that you can focus on me. All that stuff is going on every minute of all day long, and it sends all these signals to the second part of your brain, which is newer. The second part of your brain is called the paleomammalian brain because you have it in common with all the mammals. This is between 2 and 40 million years old. Your dog has this, a cat has this, a squirrel outside has this. It's also known as the limbic system. The limbic system takes all those signals from the first part and turns them into feelings. Emotions are truly the universal language of all human beings. People misunderstand feelings. I want to have good feelings. I don't want to have bad feelings. Wrong. There's no such thing as bad feelings because all your emotions are a set of signals to you that they're threats to you or opportunities, and you should either avoid them or approach them. That's it. That's all feelings are. You don't want negative emotions, but you need negative emotions. You'd be dead without negative emotions. That's what keeps you safe. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. The third part is where the emotions are supposed to go so that you can make smart decisions. That's called your prefrontal cortex. That's the truly human part of your brain, right behind your forehead. That's where you get these feelings, these emotions all day long, and you say, here's why I feel this. Here's what I'm going to do in response, consciously, in the executive center of your brain. Now, unfortunately, sometimes this system breaks down. If you get a signal from your brain and it doesn't turn into an emotion, you're in big trouble. If a car is speeding toward you and you don't feel fear, that's going to be a bad day for you. But don't worry, it's probably not going to happen. Much more common is that you have an emotion, but you actually don't register it in your executive center of your brain, and so you get managed by your emotions. Have you ever met somebody with a hair trigger? Somebody with a really bad temper? Somebody who can't control their emotions? Yeah. There's a whole class of citizens in America today that is completely limbic, that doesn't actually manage themselves with their prefrontal cortex. You know what they're called? Little kids. Little kids. I live with some of my grandchildren, right? In a big house. We have a big house. And some of my grandkids live with me, and they're complete dictators. I mean, I do something wrong, like cut the crust off the PB&J sandwich the wrong way, and they freak out. And I'm like, stop being so limbic. It doesn't help. But here's the thing. When your kids were little, and they were being really emotional and screaming about something they didn't like, here's what you said. Use your words, you said. What you're basically saying is deliver the emotion to your prefrontal cortex where you can articulate what's bothering you, and then you will develop the synaptic patterns that makes you into a human being that's self-governing. You didn't say it that way, but that's what you meant. Now, here's the problem. That wiring isn't complete for a long time. That wiring between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex is not complete in human females until the age of 21, and human males until the age of 70. Pleasure is limbic. It taps the limbic system. Enjoyment is conscious and self-governing. Do you want to really enjoy your life? Then do the things that feel good, but add 2 things, people and memory. And in so doing, it will become permanent, and you can manage your pleasures, and they won't manage you. Pleasure plus people plus memory. You'll notice that beer commercials never feature a guy alone in his apartment pounding a 12-pack. Okay? This is how many people use the product. Okay? But that's not what they show on TV because that looks kind of pathetic. And I mean, it's like favorite beer of alcoholics everywhere. No, I mean, it's not great. What do they show? A guy opening the beer with his friends or his brother. Because what they're saying is the secret to happiness is my beer plus your family and our memories, which equals enjoyment, and that's part of happiness. Now, why do I bring that up? Because this leads to the principle of self-governing behavior. That's what I tell my kids who are 27, 25, and 22. Here's what I tell my students who are on average 28 years old. If there's something that gives you pleasure and it's your thing, and if it can be addictive, which practically everything can, everything from the food we eat to the internet that we use, if you're doing it alone, you're doing it wrong. Not a perfect rule, but it's pretty darn good. Now that gave me an opportunity to explain a little bit about the brain, and now I want to use it because we're going to start getting closer to the work of this organization because we get to satisfaction. Satisfaction is the second pillar of happiness, and it's a really funny thing. Satisfaction is defined as the joy that you get from an accomplishment after struggle. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out here. I admire you so much. And if I asked you to tell me the secret to your success, you wouldn't tell me about you wouldn't say, well, just born lucky. No, you might as a joke. But what you really be wanting to tell me was all the hard times, was the scary times when you had to empty your kid's 529 college account and when you didn't know whether or not you're going to be able to make payroll and your first bankruptcy. That's what all entrepreneurs talk about. Why? Because your satisfaction is the joy that you get from your accomplishments after struggle. Only humans want to struggle. Only humans want to delay their gratification. My dog Chucho does not want to delay his rewards. Okay? He doesn't want to struggle for anything. He'd eat lying down if he could. But not you. No. As a matter of fact, we don't admire people unless they're willing to struggle. We teach our kids this. You're driving home from Little League practice. Junior's in the back. You drive past the Dairy Queen. Junior says, Mommy, let's stop for ice cream. You say, no, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. Junior says, so? And you say, you'll spoil your dinner. Junior's smart. He says, so? And then you lie. Here's what you say. You need a healthy dinner, and the ice cream isn't good for you. That's a lie. That's actually true, but that's not the reason. Here's the reason. You want Junior to come to dinner hungry, because then Junior learns a lesson that when you come to dinner hungry, you enjoy dinner, and that wires his little brain to know that good things come to those who wait. And then maybe he'll do his studies and try hard to get into a good university and then work hard to get a good job and have a happier life with more satisfaction. That's what you're trying to teach him. Here's what if you're really being honest, if Junior said, why can't we stop for ice cream? You know what the honest truth is? I want you to suffer. It's true. It doesn't sound good. Okay, now that's a weird thing about the delay of gratification. But it gets weirder after we get that thing that we want, right? Because Mother Nature plays a little trick then. Mother Nature says, when you get that thing that you want, you're going to love it forever. If you get that car, you get that house, you get that watch, you get that raise, you get that promotion, you get that relationship, that it'll be great forever. But it's not true, is it? You know what people will say? Young adults will say, if you marry me, you'll make me happy forever. I got data on that. It doesn't matter what you say on that day or your wedding day. It matters what you say every day after that until death do you part. See, this is the thing, isn't it? It's not one and done. Mother Nature's lying to you. During the coronavirus epidemic, I was living in the outskirts of Boston at the time, and we were super deeply locked down, which was bad enough for me and my wife, Esther. It was the worst for our daughter, Marina, who was a senior in high school, our last child at home. And she had to live just day in and day out with just her parents. She was lonely. She was getting a sorry excuse for school, learning nothing except, being propagandized, and it was bad. And every day I would come down in the morning, she'd be sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop and what was supposed to be passing for a math class and looking depressed. And one morning I come down and she's actually laughing. And I say, honey, obviously you're not in math class. She says, actually I am, but I'm actually watching a video. It came on my YouTube feed. I said, what is it? She said, what's so funny? She says, I don't know. I actually don't know. It's an old man dancing like a chicken and trying to sing. I said, let's see. So I come around to the other side of the table because, I'm always up for a cheap laugh. The old man dancing like a chicken and trying to sing. It was Mick Jagger, right? And she doesn't know who it is because kids these days, right? And she said, do you people like this? Because there's all these boomers in the audience doing this, and he's like 100. And I said, it's not the song. It's a fairly trivial song. It's what it's saying about human life. I can't get no satisfaction. That's what he was singing, the biggest hit. That thing has been such a hit. That was #1 on the charts when I was 1 in 1965. And it's still a big deal today because of what it says about the human condition. I can't get no satisfaction, but I try and I try and I try. I said, sweetheart, to my daughter, that's wrong. You can get satisfaction or you wouldn't try. You're not stupid. Here's what Mick Jagger should be singing. I can't keep no satisfaction, but I try and I try and I try. This is the tyranny of satisfaction, as you think you can keep it, but you can't, and that's why you keep running and running and running and running. But there's a way to get past that. See, every religion of any substance and every good philosophy has gotten the workaround, the hack, the glitch in the matrix so that you can keep satisfaction. And here's how it works. Satisfaction is not a question of just having more forever. More. There's people who don't like capitalism, think that that's what we think. That's not what we think. We actually know the true formula for satisfaction that lasts. Here's what it is. Satisfaction is all the things that you have divided by the things that you want. Haves divided by wants. If you want to have lasting satisfaction, you don't need to just have more, you also need to want less. You need to have a wants management strategy. That means you need to have the kind of life where you can put things into perspective. You need good values where you're chipping away, not just adding in your life. Here's how I do it, by the way. I take this seriously. We all have these bucket lists. For those of you who came to the United States as immigrants, thank you for choosing America, by the way. But we have all these weird idioms. And one of them is this bucket list, which is this metaphor for all of your cravings and desires and attachments, and you list them, maybe on your birthday, and then you imagine yourself getting all these things to motivate you. That's your bucket list, right? I found my bucket list that I wrote on my 40th birthday. I found it on my 50th birthday. It was audacious, and I'd done everything on the list, and I was less happy. So I thought to myself, I need a new kind of list. And I started making a reverse bucket list so I could focus on the denominator as opposed to just the numerator. I started making a list on my birthday of all my cravings and desires. I'm not actually ashamed of these things, quite the contrary, but I don't want to be managed by my desires. I don't want to be managed by my attachments. I just cross them out. I say, easy come, easy go. So 1.5 years ago, in 2024, in May of 2024, I had a big birthday with a 0 on it. It wasn't 50, obviously. Equally obviously, I hope it was not 70. So now you know. And this is in May of an election year, presidential election year. You all remember this. And I thought to myself, what are my big attachments that I need to put on my reverse bucket list so that I can achieve greater lasting satisfaction in my life? You know what it is? Here's my political opinions. I thought to myself, I need fewer political opinions because I need more friends. Yeah. And again, I got nothing against my political opinions. I think they're right, but they were just too strong. And I realized something as a behavioral scientist. I have been productized in this country, and so have you. See, there's a political media establishment out there that wants you to adjudicate your relationships on the basis of your political opinions. Why? Because when you hate, somebody profits, just not you. And I thought to myself, no. So I wrote down my strongest 8 political opinions and I crossed them out. And what I said to myself is, when somebody disagrees with me, I love them. I'm not going to adjudicate my relationships on the basis of these differences. That's insane. I'm out. I'm in rebellion. And I ask all of you to join me in that rebellion in America today. Fight back. So that's satisfaction. That's satisfaction. But now we get to the real one, the big one, which is meaning. You can go a long time. You're very disciplined people. You're very successful people. How do I know? Because you're in this room. And you can go a long time without enjoyment and a long time without satisfaction, but you can't go 10 minutes without knowing the meaning of your life. You can't. You can't do it. And that's the biggest problem that we have with mental health in America today. I've got the data on that. I've got a book coming out in April called The Meaning of Your Life, Finding Purpose in an Age of Emptiness. And what I show conclusively with the research is that the problem that we have with increasing rates of depression and anxiety for young adults under 35 years old is an increasing inability to answer the question, what is the meaning of my life? And we know why. Because our brains have been wired differently. Because increasingly young adults are living in a simulation of real life. And in so doing, they're blocking the hemisphere of their brain that they need access to find life's meaning. Now, do you have this problem? Let's find out. Let's find out. Let's find out whether meaning is a crisis in your life. Here's how I test my students. Now, meaning, let me define it. Meaning is a combination of three things. Coherence, why things happen the way they do. Purpose, your goals and direction. And significance, why your life matters. You have to answer questions about those three things. But I'm going to boil it down to a 2-question exam that I'm going to give you right now. If you have answers to these 2 questions and you're really sure about these answers, congratulations. If you don't have answers, if you're scratching your head, if the answers don't exist, then you know what to go looking for. Congratulations in that case too. Even if you fail this exam, now you know what to go looking for. And I want you to be taking this on behalf of young people in your life who might be struggling. And there are a lot of you out there that know young people that are in a huge amount of struggle in their lives. Could they answer these questions? What are you going to do to help them answer these questions? Okay, here's the exam. Question 1. Why are you alive? Big question. Maybe it's who created you or for what purpose? Second question. For what would you die today? For what would you give your life happily? If the answer is oh no or nothing, that's a big problem. But here's the thing. I know all of you have kids, easy, right? But I would challenge you. What else? What else would you give your life for happily?
Define happily.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. So here's the thing. When people go on a quest to answer these questions, when they do that, their lives change. Their lives open like a flower. I see this with my students. Every week they turn in these essays and they're wrestling with these questions and it's beautiful. It's like watching a miracle. I've seen it with my own kids. I made each one of my kids when they were 18 years old write a business plan because their life is an entrepreneurial endeavor. And I'm the venture capitalist. So, fair's fair. My oldest son, Joaquin, boy, he turned in a bang-up business plan. I invested immediately. But then came my second son, Carlos, my problem child. The second child, the middle child, it's always the same, right? And it was with him, it was just smart kid, but not motivated. Calls from the principal's office. Carlos didn't show up for his exams today. Carlos got a D in math. Carlos just failed history. Carlos might have graduated with this class. Finally, Esther, my wife, such an optimist. She says, at least we know he's not cheating. So here's the problem. He wasn't even having fun. He was just aimless, like so many young people today. So he turned in a very rudimentary business plan because he knew he had to. And I sent it back for revisions immediately because it wasn't any good. And he was indignant. He said, I'm going to find some college to go to because, Dad, you always said in America, if you could fog a mirror, you could find a college. And I said, that's not my public position, right? But it wasn't right. And he was indignant because he said, it's my life, not yours. And he was right. But here's the thing. It was my life too. Why did I spend my 20s playing the French horn in Barcelona? because I wasn't ready for college, but I went anyway because my dad was a college professor at SPU and then later at UW. And that's what everybody did. And his dad was a college professor. It was the family business. And so I went to college, and 10 months later, well, dropped out, kicked out, splitting hairs. And so when he turned that business plan to me, I said, I understand what I'm talking about here. Do better. Find something more creative. Find a way to become a man. And he did. He revisited the whole concept, and he came back with this idea of working hard with his hands by himself outside. And he took a job on a dryland wheat farm in Grangeville, Idaho, of all places, working for Brent Fry's father. He lived in their basement, and he worked hard, and he made $11 an hour. He saved a bunch of money. And then after 13 months, his pockets relatively full of cash, he went on to step 2 of his business plan. My son joined the Marines. Yeah. And that was the hardest thing he ever did. He went to basic training, boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. Then he went to Camp Lejeune, did the infantry training battalion. And then the hard part came at Camp Pendleton. He became a sniper and did the indoctrination for the Scout Sniper Platoon. Yeah. Scary job, tough job. Disappearing for a long period of time, and you can't track his phone. It's scary for me and his mom. And he would come back, and I'd say, where were you? And he'd say, I can't tell you, but it was hot. Yeah. But when he got out at 23, my son truly was a different person. You'll know them by their fruits, says the Bible. And who was he? At 23, my son was married. Wonderful girl. She was pregnant. They last weekend had their second son. It's amazing. This is an act of rebellion in our society today, to fall in love, get married, have babies. You have to know your why, don't you? You got to know the answers to your questions. So here are the answers to Carlos's questions, not because these are your answers, but because these are American answers worthy of a young man. Why are you alive? Because God made me to serve other people. For what would you give your life? For my faith, and for my family, and for my fellow Marines, obviously, and for the United States of America. Boom. So, what are your answers? What are your answers to those questions? What are your children's answers to those questions? How are you making it easier for people to find the answers to those questions? This is our job in our society today. This is what we have to make easier for people, or at least possible for people, and not distracting them with stupid nonsense, including political polarization and trivial internet banalities. These are the big things we need to be talking about if we want happiness. Now, here's what I want to do to bring this back around to the subject at hand for tonight's meeting, for tonight's dinner, which is to celebrate this great organization. I want to ask you a business question. This is what we do at HBS all the time. What do great CEOs do all day that failed CEOs don't do? That's the kind of question we do. What are the habits of the most successful executives? That's not what I want to ask. Here's the question. What do the happiest people do every day that the unhappiest people don't do every day? And by that, I mean people who have the most enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. What are their habits that are lacking in people who don't have that, who don't have those things? And I'm going to tell you what they are. Now, habits aren't everything. About half of your baseline happiness is genetic. We know this from identical twins that were separated at birth and reunited at age 40. Half of their baseline happiness is genetic. Literally, your mother made you unhappy. But that's not bad news. Why? Because if you know your genetic tendencies, you can manage your habits accordingly. Half of your tendency to drink too much alcohol is genetic. But if you know that, if you came to me and said, hey, Arthur, my mom and dad were drunks and all 4 of my grandparents drank too much, I guess I'm going to be an alcoholic. I'd say, no. I have a special technique, high-tech way for you to turn the genetic tendency to zero. It's called not drinking. Know your genetics, tailor your habits. Now, that's 50%. Another 25% of your happiness is circumstantial. So all the things that are going on, if they're happy things in your life, they push up your happiness by a quarter. And if they're unhappy, they push you down by a quarter. But they don't last Because they're based on emotions. We already talked about that. And emotions go away. What you need to do is to give yourself systematically better circumstances with good habits. And this is the point. 25% of your happiness is under your direct managerial control with 4 habits, which will also give you systematically better circumstances and allow you to manage your genetics. Here's what they are. Here's the big 4. Your faith, your family, your friends, and your work. Those are the big 4, my friends. Now let me explain. When I say faith, I don't mean my faith. I'm a Roman Catholic. It is literally the most important thing in my life, bar none. But as a social scientist, I will tell you that my way when it comes to happiness isn't the only way. What you have to do is find something that makes you transcend yourself every single day. Because left to your devices, you're the only thing you'll think about. Mother Nature, she wants you to focus on you all day long. My job, my car, my lunch, my commute, my money, my television programs, me, me, me. It's so boring. You need something to take you off the tedium of your own life. And the way to do that is by zooming out. Maybe you study the Stoic philosophers with great seriousness. Maybe you walk for an hour before dawn without devices every day. Maybe you study the fugues of Johann Sebastian Bach and marvel at their glory. Maybe you start a Vipassana meditation practice, which I've studied for many years and recommend to you. Or maybe you practice the faith of your youth, but you need something every single day or you'll be in your head. You'll be the star of your psychodrama, and that's bad. Number 2 is family life. Stephen said this in the beginning, and his stat was exactly right. 1 in 6 Americans today is not talking to family members because of politics. Direct members of your family because of politics. 1 in 6. I could explain the neuroscience of family connections and how we need these to be properly happy. Here's my point. There's one reason to have a schism with your family, and that's abuse. And here's a news flash for America. Differences of political opinion are not abuse. They're differences of political opinion in a free country. That's all it is. Third is friendship. Friendship is in a huge crisis in this country. I studied loneliness for many years. I look at it for people under 30 years old, and more than 50% say, no one knows me well. That's because of abusive internet use. That's why. But there's a second group of lonely people that I see all the time too, because I study aging strivers like myself. Executives and entrepreneurs are some of the loneliest people I've ever met. Funny. The more power you have, generally speaking, the lonelier you are. Now I can look, if this is you and you're running in a large organization, I can look at your calendar and you're surrounded by people all day long. Tons of people, right? But then I'd ask you to say, are they your friends? You say, sure, they are my friends. I'd say, are they real friends or deal friends? And you know the difference. If you need an explanation, your deal friends are the most useful people to you. And if you're successful, you have all kinds of people around who are useful. But you also need the real friends who are, I guess they're useless. Do you have enough useless people in your life? People you just say, you're useless to me, I just love you. If you don't, you gotta do the work. And last but not least is your work itself, is the way that you earn your daily bread, right? And here's the thing about it. As a social scientist, I've studied for so many years, what kind of jobs bring the most happiness? Is it public sector, private sector, nonprofit sector? It turns out it's a wash. Is it above average incomes or below average incomes? It's a wash. Is it higher education or lower education positions? Doesn't matter. Only 2 things matter. 2 things will bring joy to you through your work. Here's what they are. Earning your success and serving other people. Now, earning your success, what is that? That's creating value with your life and value in the lives of other people. That you're being rewarded and acknowledged and recognized for your hard work and merit and personal responsibility. That's why the free enterprise system is a happiness machine. That's it. That's it. Look, it's not perfect. I'm not going to lie to you and say it doesn't actually have holes in it and things we need to fix. That it does everything all the time perfectly. But the truth of the matter is if you have a tenure-based system, I'm an academic, trust me. They're terrible for happiness. If you have a loyalty-based system, you might as well just go live in a dictatorship. They're no good. Merit is everything. And this is the gift we need to give to young people today. But second is serving other people. The essence of dignity is to be needed. I've read work from the Washington Policy Center for many years. And a lot of the work talks about the way that poor people are kind of treated as liabilities to manage by the welfare system. That's a moral error. Why? Because nobody is stupid. You know when somebody treats you like a liability. You know it. And that strips you of your dignity. You need to be needed. That's the most important thing. And in your work, when you feel truly needed by other people, then you feel the dignity. Then you actually get the joy. This is the goal. This should be the goal of our poverty alleviation systems. It's not just material sustenance. It should be the dignity that we should bring to everybody. And that's why we have work requirements, for example. So ask yourself this. I bet all of you feel needed. I know everybody at the Washington Policy Center feels needed, especially tonight. But do the people who work for you feel needed? Do they actually get to see the faces of the people who are touched by what you're doing? This will change their lives. And this is what we need to work for. So here's the point, my friends. If you want to become a happier person, you want more enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning, you need to practice these 4 things. Faith, family, friends, and work. But it's actually just one thing. It's actually just one thing. Because here's what I'm talking about. Love of the divine, love of your family, love of your friends, and love of the whole world through the way that you sanctify your ordinary work. Happiness is love. That's the difference. That's what it comes down to. Do everything in love. And when you don't know what to do, love notwithstanding your feelings. That's the secret to what we're actually trying to do. And that gets me back to why I'm so encouraged to be with you here tonight, and so in such admiration of you, this big group for supporting WPC. See, what do we need? We need more love in this country. We need more good ideas that are spread as gifts, as not as weapons in this country. But more importantly, this. We need values that actually bring happiness. Here's the thing about the work that's going on here. This is actually missionary work. It really is. We're encouraging people to live in such a way that they have more joy in their lives. And you, all of you, you're missionaries because you share these values. Now, let me tell you something about missionary work. I have missionaries on both sides of my family, lots of missionaries in my family. And my grandfather was a funny guy. And he used to say, you know words that no human has ever spoken? I said, what? He said, good news, there's missionaries on the porch. Right? But that's not the kind of mission work I'm talking about. See, the missionaries who are really, really effective are the ones who are in service and are followed because of their virtue. And they're followed because of the joy that's actually in their lives. How can you actually make America happier today? How can you make America happier again? How can you do it? By being happy. That's how you can do it. By sharing these values in a spirit of joy as gifts that have been shared in love with other people. That's what this organization is all about. And that's what all of us can actually do. In a time when the country is hurting and we're all worried about the future of America, the best thing that we can do is to develop a mission, an apostolate of love and joy, and watch people see it in our lives with no exceptions. If you can do that with me, if this is the mission that we walk away from on this wonderful night here in Bellevue, Washington, on September 11th, 2025, then this is the day that things really start to change. And they start to change because we have magnetized the love that's in our hearts for this state and for this country and for this world. Join me in that fight. God bless you and thank you.